But wow, I mean, I don't think many of us would have predicted Barcelona 5, Real Madrid 2 in that one. Kylian Mbappe, he was the one that opened the scoring. We thought things were going to be going Real Madrid's way. And, for so long we've been asking, will the real Kylian Mbappe please stand up? But then it was all Barcelona after that. And one man named Rafinha, who was absolutely, I suppose, as we could have discussed before off camera, that he's probably the best Brazilian right now. But what was it like for you, Alex, just witnessing that Clásico? Because it was one of the more one-sided ones that we have seen in some time.
Yeah, it was incredible. I think I'm a bit of a bad luck charm for Madrid, actually, because I'm not usually pitch side for these games, but I have been pitch side for a few Clásicos now. And I think every time I've been pitch side for a Clásico, Barcelona have won, and often heavily. And this was no exception. It was remarkable the way that Real Madrid collapsed. Certainly the Real Madrid fans that were there in the stadium in Jeddah couldn't quite believe it, and neither could the Barcelona fans, to be honest. I think the sort of defining image for me being there was just before half-time. When Barcelona's was in the 90th minute of added time, Barca's fourth goal went in. I was stood right next to the Barcelona bench, ready to go on air at half-time on ABC. And just the Barcelona bench, the subs, the staff, everybody jumping up and down, punching the air, just joyously, could not believe what was happening. And Madrid, of course, by contrast, deflated. The second half, we know that Real Madrid are famous for their comebacks, but I don't think that was ever really on the cards here. And even when Barcelona went down to 10 men, when Szczesny was sent off, it still didn't feel like it was really on the cards. Madrid never really got going. And in fact, a lot of the Madrid fans there, by the final whistle, they had left. They'd left their seats and they were heading home. It's fair enough because traffic in Jeddah is a nightmare, but still they didn't want to see any more. In terms of what it means, I guess we'll get onto that, but it's hard to say. We have seen, it's worth saying, some massive Clásico scorelines for both teams over the last few years. We've seen Barca win big. We've seen Madrid win big. Madrid won big in the Supercopa final last year, for example. And it's not always reflective or sort of predictive of what happens in terms of the rest of the season.
Yeah, Sam, just from the Barca perspective, how significant is this win? Because again, a Barcelona win in El Clásico, especially in a cup competition, you expect it to go Real Madrid's way one year, Barca's the next year, as we have been seeing. But it's not just that they won, it's how they won. This season as well, given the firepower that Real Madrid have, just how big of a statement was this?
It's a significant win because of their recent results. They obviously started the season so well, and there'd been doubts sort of December coming into the new year. They lost to Atletico Madrid just before the winter break. So it's really significant in that sense. They really needed that win. Obviously, I think the manner of the performance, I think if you look back on the 4-0, you could perhaps look back on that and say, in the first half, it was very even. Perhaps Madrid, 4-0 flattered Barca a little bit. Whereas this time it felt like 5-2 was maybe people think it's exaggerating to say fair, but the chances they created before the Mbappe goal, the chances they created afterwards, and perhaps if Szczesny's not sent off, perhaps they go on and score 6 or 7, who knows? So I think this was perhaps a more significant performance. You can then debate, the fact, Madrid were their system, whether they can carry on to play with the four forwards, if you include Bellingham in that line, obviously Lucas Vazquez at right back, Tchouaméni out of position centre back, the lack of sort of protection in midfield. There were reasons that Barca had that space that perhaps they didn't have in some of those games when they were struggling before Christmas. But I think it was, really, really significant and important for Barca after that recent run to give them that confidence boost. And now they've beaten Madrid twice, scoring, 4 times or more. They got 4 past Bayern, 3 past Borussia Dortmund. And you can there's 2 ways to look at that Atletico setback before Christmas. You could look at it in the scheme of their extended bad run, or if you sort of group it with the games that they've done well in, the big games against Dortmund, Bayern and Real Madrid. You can kind of get Flick's argument out of the game that they did play well. They were certainly unfortunate to lose it, certainly in the manner that they did. So I think they've got real sort of confidence boost now going into the second half of the season. And it's going to be interesting, I think, because I think it almost, this could spectacularly come back to haunt me, but I think it almost makes them more of a threat in the Champions League than it does in La Liga, because they've got so much confidence now against these sort of, the teams that in the past they struggled against. They struggled so much in the Champions League when they've had to play good sides. The Madrid thing, like Alex said, has always been a little bit more unpredictable, but they look like a team that on their day can beat anyone if they sort of reserve their energy and they have Rafinha and Lamine Yamal for.
It's big for Flick, isn't it, in particular, I think. And listening to him in the post-match presser, you could sort of see, I don't know if you'd say it's a relief, but the fact that, having started the season so well, they were the informed team in Spain, maybe in Europe, everyone was saying, look, Flick's the guy, this is the new sort of Barcelona project. And then having the slump they'd had in the league, where they dropped points in, 6 of the last 7 league games, Sam. I think Flick needed something like this to be able to point to, and not just Flick, but Laporta as well, who we'll speak about later, to be able to say, look, we are moving in the right direction. The way that we're playing tactically, it hasn't been found out. All the talk of the offside trap and the high line teams had worked it out. That's not the case. We can still play the way we want to play and be the very best. So I think the team needed it, and Flick needed it as well. And interesting to listen to him afterwards. I mean, he's quite a laid back character. I mean, Sam would have listened to a lot more of his presses than I have, but he wasn't getting too carried away. He just sort of stuck to congratulating the players, talked about being proud, but he wouldn't. There was an underlying feeling that, look, it's a trophy, but it's the Super Cup. Like, it's a trophy, but it's the least important trophy. But I think more than just a trophy, I think it's about being point to something and point to a performance and a way of playing and saying, no, look, this is still valid. This is still the way that we ought to be playing. And there's sort of like a big future for this team.
It's so funny to hear you say that because, of course, I covered the final when Barcelona won it, and it was Xavi that was in charge, and he was just over the moon. You could have told him that it was probably the Champions League. It was his first trophy for Barcelona, and we do know that there's a bit more of an emotional connection to Barcelona than Hansi Flick would have as well. But funnily enough, too, Sam, one of our other reporters, Julian Laurens, on our other show, actually said that he wouldn't be surprised if this current Barcelona, the way they're going, could even win the Champions League. Is that even too far-fetched to think?
Yeah, I spoke about this the other day as well on another podcast, and I don't think it is too far-stretched to think. Obviously you've got the draw, you've got moments of the season, you need a little bit of luck in one of the games probably. But like I said, I think that if things fall into place, if they get, you probably do need a favourable draw at some point. You might need a little bit of luck, a refereeing decision, or, not a Ralpo to pull down a PSG player, or certain things to not happen in games. And yeah, at the moment, you're looking across Europe, and they've already beaten Bayern Munich, who are the leaders in Germany. They've, absolutely battered Real Madrid twice, who are not leading in Spain, but obviously the standout Champions League team in recent years. You're looking at teams in England who are all struggling apart from Liverpool. You're perhaps looking at Liverpool as the strongest team, perhaps maybe a team like Inter, who are sound defensively, would perhaps pose a few more problems. But you're looking at Barcelona, I think, with the right run, with a little bit of luck, with players staying fit, they could easily go very, very far in the Champions League. It's the first time I've probably thought in a long time. I thought the draw opened up a little bit for them last year, but there was still that sort of doubt because of how they were playing in the league, whether they could really beat sort of a top side on their day.
Well, I suppose it's all good in the hood for Barcelona. But Alex, one thing that we do know Real Madrid love, it is that Champions League. And the fact that we're talking about Barcelona looking now as favorites potentially on the run they're on, that's definitely going to shake Real Madrid a little bit. But after this kind of result, after they were blown out of the water by Barcelona, after what we can say was shambolic defending or just lack of defending at all, it's rare to see Real Madrid like that. I know, of course, they show their flaws here and there, season in, season out. But one thing that Luis Garcia always tells me, when Real Madrid are backed into a corner, we've always seen them come out fighting, and that story is never exactly written. We saw it as well in the Champions League final against Liverpool, when Liverpool seemed to be all over them at halftime. We knew Real Madrid still had something, and I think you said it best. It was weird to see that Real Madrid just really could not find any way back in this one. So how shaken do you think they are after this result? How shaken probably should they be after this result?
Yeah, I think there are some big glaring weaknesses in this team. I think everybody knows that. And it's been a funny season for Real Madrid because they started really quite slowly. They dropped points in the league. They weren't playing particularly well. They haven't really been playing consistently well at any point. But what happens is they've got these incredibly talented individuals who quite often get them out of trouble. We've seen Bellingham playing really well for the last couple of months. We've seen Mbappe scoring goals for the last couple of months, even if he's not quite at his best. You've got Vinicius, you've got Rodrigo. So they've been sort of on a gentle kind of upwards curve, I would say, up to this point in the season. And then this is a real setback, this result. And I talk about the weaknesses in the team. I mean, poor old Lucas Vazquez at right back, filling in for Dani Carvajal, who's out for the whole season. Carvajal is so important to this team in terms of as a player, as a leader in the dressing room, in terms of his mentality, everything. He's a huge loss. And Lucas, just defensively, unfortunately, doesn't quite have it. And we keep seeing him getting caught out in certain situations, at the far post, not really having the sort of defensive instincts to react and track runners. And it keeps happening time and time again. Sam mentioned Tchouaméni, who's filling in at centre-back, not having the best time of it. I actually like him more, actually. I think probably at centre-back than I do in midfield, although he doesn't like playing there. We've got David Alaba coming back. Let's see at what point Alaba can come in alongside Rudiger. But the defence is a huge issue. And it's something that Ancelotti's been worried about all season and has talked about all season. There's been this doubt, hasn't there? Like, can you fit Mbappe into the team with these four forwards, as we mentioned, Mbappe, Vinicius, Bellingham, Rodrigo, can you make that work? Is that ever going to be balanced enough? And you've got Fede Valverde doing a lot of work in midfield, too much work in midfield. It was Camavinga alongside him in this game, who I think the team is generally better with Camavinga in it, but they're lacking a body in there. And I think there's always been a huge doubt as to whether this system is sustainable long term. I always thought that one of those four in it is going to be Rodrigo because he's just not on the same level as the other three. Has to drop out, especially in the big games. And I still think that's probably the case. But no, big question marks. You never rule them out. You never rule them out in any competition, and especially not in the Champions League. And I think maybe in the Champions League, you could see them getting by a bit with some of that individual talent, maybe more than you would over the course or half a league season. Because I think in the league, you've got to be more consistent. I'm not sure they're going to have quite enough to finish ahead of Atleti and Barca in the league, because I think these weaknesses are there, unless, of course, Ancelotti finds a way to address them, either tactically or whether they look to bring someone in January. But right now, I think there's a lot of work to do.
Alex, do you think that Madrid need another central midfielder? Do you think Tchouaméni and Camavinga, obviously Barca have been looking for years for that sort of deeper midfielder. Do you think they have someone who can protect enough?
I think they need basically a Toni Kroos. I think that essentially that's what they need, is a deep lying, organising midfielder. People have talked about a similar sort of profile to what people have talked about for Barca at times. A Martin Zubimendi type player, who's a player, of course, who's been looked at by everybody, by City, by Liverpool, by Arsenal. Barca and Madrid have been linked as well. That type of player, I think they are lacking, because you've got Luka Modric, who everybody loves. He came off the bench in this Supercopa final, but he's not going to be a regular starter at this point. But someone who can be an organizer. I mean, maybe Camavinga can become that player. Because like I said, I love Camavinga as a player. Maybe he can become that. But and Fede Valverde has so many qualities as well. But I do think they lack someone who can kind of set the tempo and organize the play and knit things together in midfield. So I think it's a question of numbers in midfield, having three rather than two. But I think it is also about the personnel.
I was just going to say that because right after the departure of Casemiro, the retirement of Toni Kroos, and then, of course, the impending retirement of a certain Luka Modric, I think we had so many chats saying that with the names that Real Madrid had, the future is bright, that their midfield is secure, but it's showing that a certain Toni Kroos is not as replaceable or as easily replaceable as we once thought. Sam, I throw it over to you over on the Barcelona side now too. In terms of a significant win like this over Real Madrid, they know their rivals very, very well. But how shaken do you think Barcelona feel Real Madrid are after this in terms of how it could probably guide their approach now for the rest of the La Liga season?
I mean, we can't really talk about Barcelona Madrid in the La Liga season without really talking about Atletico, I guess. We should have a shout out for them because they're currently top of the table. I don't know. Barca are in a tricky position now, aren't they? Because they're 6 points off Atletico, they're 5 points off Real Madrid. So they're still the two Madrid clubs still have a massive upper hand in La Liga. That's why I think more than anything, like I said before, I think what it gives Barca is that confidence. This is a young group of players in the Supercopa squad. Obviously, not all able to play because guys like Marc Bernal traveled who was injured, but they had 15 players from the Messiah, 7 featured in the game. In midfield you've got Gavi, Pedri's obviously not from La Masia, but another youngster, Marc Gasol, Lamine Yamal, Pau Kubasi, Alejandro Balde. It's such a young team. And I can only sort of imagine how much confidence is flowing through those players right now in terms of, obviously, when Lewandowski was speaking to Mine Einstein for ESPN before the game, he spoke about that need to sort of convert these performances and to turn up in every game. But I kind of think they can kind of write off those defeats as Leganés and Las Palmas, as bad as they've been and as bad as that run is, because they have been so good against Real Madrid, and that's kind of like their measuring stick. So it's kind of like, we've got that talent. Yes, we do need to up it in the other games. And that's really what they need to focus on now, not the fact that they've got the measure of Madrid, but that they can turn up and produce these performances at home to, losing at home to Leganés and Las Palmas. They've already lost five games this season. I think they lost 5 in the whole of last season, and 4 of them were to Real Madrid and Girona, whereas they've lost to Real Sociedad, Leganés, Las Palmas, Osasuna, and now Atletico. So that's what they need to work on, which was never really in doubt, regardless of this Real Madrid performance.
Well, Sam's absolutely right. Let's talk about the title race, and let's talk about the ones who are actually leading right now. And that's Atletico de Madrid and Cholo Simeone. Alex, something that, we saw them because they're not necessarily flying under the radar, but because of the way they can play, and Cholo has them play sometimes. It's not the most attractive type of football, and it's easy for our attention to always be on Real Madrid and Barcelona. But the truth is, neither at the moment are leading that La Liga table. That's exactly how Atleti finished the year, and that's exactly how they are continuing right now. Top of the table, especially after a 1-0 win at the weekend over Osasuna. They're looking like the real deal. We kind of keep expecting them to drop off, but it's not happened yet. We're entering the business end of the La Liga season. I know it's only 1 point ahead of Real Madrid, and people like to say it is easier to chase than it is to lead. But Atleti, are they looking like the real deal in this title race?
I think they put themselves in a position to go on and win the league, potentially. Talk about going them under the radar. I think that's exactly where Simeone likes them to be. He doesn't like any talk of a title race. In fact, some of the players were saying that to ESPN before Christmas, like, he doesn't let us talk about it. It's not a topic of conversation. It's banned, basically, at the training ground. But they're there. And I think, Simeone's talked about this a lot, about how they have to basically wait for a season when Madrid are a little bit off and Barca are a little bit off, and that's their opportunity and they have to take it. And maybe that's what we're seeing this year because, well, clearly Barca, with the points they've dropped in the league already, that they've done that. They've given Atletico this opportunity, and Madrid now, again, are having a bit of a wobble. So the opportunity's there. They've been growing as a team. I think Simeone has basically sort of found this team along the way because at the start of the season, it wasn't clear to me the sort of shape that Simeone wanted, the personnel as well, because, it was changing from game to game between Griezmann and Sorloth and Julian. It kept switching around, but they've sort of found a system and an 11 now that works, and they're getting results. And they've got so much talent. Any team with Griezmann and Julian Alvarez up front, you've got a chance. And when you've got Sorloth coming off the bench and scoring goals with the kind of frequency that he's doing, it's massive. People talk about their squad being maybe the strongest Atletico Madrid squad ever. And you look at it, they haven't got the strongest 11 necessarily compared to Madrid and Barca, but you look at the squad overall, and they've got a lot of talent, 2 players in each position. So I think they've got a chance. Now we've said this before, we've had this conversation before at this stage of the season, and generally they fall away. Generally they can't maintain it. But of course, they've done it twice in the Simeone era. They've gone on and won the league, and there's no reason they couldn't do it this year. Like I said, I think right now they are where they want to be. A lot has to fall in their favour between now and the end of the season, but they could do it, of course.
Sam, what are you thinking? Is this going to be a case of probably a slow and steady and maybe a Cholo-style football could win the race as opposed to just blowing teams out of the water that Real Madrid and Barcelona usually have done when they have, gone on to win the title?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a genuine 3-horse race now. I think Simeone spoke about in Alex's piece about needing those two teams to drop off a little bit. And Real Madrid, not so much this season. They've obviously lost games in the Champions League and to Barca. They've not dropped so many points in LaLiga, certainly not lost games anyway, apart from the Atletico and the Clasico. So I think it's going to be a genuine 3-horse. I think Atletico will be right up there. It's hard to know because they're not going to maintain this run at 14 straight wins that they've got going at the moment. Defensively, they're so good. That's the reason they're up there. Conceded, I think, just 12 goals in 19 games, which I think is 7 fewer than Real Madrid and a lot fewer than Barcelona, who conceded, I think, 20 or maybe even 30 now. So that's going to be key. Obviously, Robin Normand has come back. They're really good at the back. It's obviously a cop-out, but obviously once you get to March, we sort of know a little bit more what's happening about, if Madrid and Atletico are currently outside the top 8 in the Champions League, if they're having to manage more Champions League games than Barca, could that open sort of a window for Barca? These sort of things, Copa del Rey runs, if teams go deep in the Copa del Rey, you could end up with a situation where in the semi-final, you've got 2 legs of a Madrid derby or a Clasico, which could sort of boost Atletico or one of the other teams in the title race. So I think it's going to come down to little details like that. If Barca go in far in the Champions League and are 6 points behind, perhaps they end up chucking a few league games. At the moment, I'd say the table doesn't lie. The 2 Madrid teams are massive favourites. I probably think Madrid just have the edge. I think the attacking talent they've got will help them win more games. Atletico haven't scored as many goals, but they are scoring late goals. They're managing the squad well. It's going to be really, really interesting. Much more interesting than I thought it would be at the start of the season.
I think what we can say is if Atleti don't go on and challenge at least challenge, it's a huge missed opportunity. If they don't now, if they can't go on and really, really have a good go this season with big questions about both of the other two, when can they,
Exactly, because they've definitely put themselves in a really good position. And just looking at the games that they do have left against each other in La Liga this season, we have the Madrid derby coming up 9th of February. You have Atleti versus Barca. Atleti this time hosting Barcelona. They got the better of Barcelona and just snatched that victory right before the winter break. That one's coming up in March. And then we know El Clasico is 11th of May for the moment. That's just a few days after my birthday. So will be a festive season. In terms of the crucial ones, by the time it's May rolling around, we tend to already have a clear idea of who's going to win. So, Alex, of all these matchups coming up between the three sides, which ones do you see as the true defining ones?
I mean, you picked out that Madrid derby, which is not too far off at all. I think if Atletico win that derby, I think that's when it gets serious. That's when you could even go and say that they're favourites for the title if they win. And like you say, that by the time the Clásico comes around in May, that's a little bit late. But that would be a pretty serious statement if they could beat Madrid in the derby.
Sam, you too?
Yeah, because it's obviously the first one as well, and perhaps the fact that they're the top two at the moment, that one's absolutely huge at the moment. The other thing is Barca do kind of have, in theory, they played 11 away games and 8 home games, so in theory they've got a more sort of favourable run in. They've got the teams coming to them, but they've actually been worse at home than away, so it kind of destroys the theory a little bit as well.
Exactly. All right. Well, I'm sure that's probably something that Joan Laporta didn't want to hear, knowing that it will be a showdown between the two Madrid teams for the title. But he's already got some silverware so far. This is Tuesday when we're recording, so I believe he has just spoken to the media. Sam, what did we learn from one of his epically long conversations?
Yeah, another 2 hours of Joan Laporta. Just the usual stuff, really. The press conference was to sort of address the whole situation which has happened with Dani Olmo and Pau Victor over the cancelling of their registrations and then them being re-registered via an appeal to Spain's sports ministry. He basically just accused sort of the whole situation. He didn't really sort of specifically say that it's a campaign against the club by LaLiga and the federation, but enemies of the club are sort of behind everything that's gone on over the last 2 weeks, and nothing has surprised him. Etc. He explained that the club had done everything within time, in his opinion, to get the two players registered. He explained, details about the Nike deal, about the sale of the VIP seats in the Camp Nou when it's renovated, etc., which get them back within the Liga's financial parameters to be able to register the players and to be able to sign players moving forward in the future. The Liga and the Federation obviously said that final documentation arrived too late on January the 3rd. The deadline was December the 31st, and that's where we're at the moment. But the players are playing. Laporta's swinging for his enemies. I guess the one disappointment was, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe there is no element of self-responsibility or self-criticism here, but to let it run to that point anyway, even if everything that he says is true, it would have been nice for him to say, look, we ran it a little bit too late this time, but we didn't get any of that from Joan Laporta. There was not a single ounce of mea culpa. We could have done things a little bit better. He said we've managed everything well, but yeah, I can't quite get down with all of that. But yes, Gordon's it's going to run over the next couple of months. Probably not the ferocity we've seen over the last couple of weeks with the appeals and counter appeals, but it's not completely settled just yet. And we have a situation where in a couple of months, the CSD, the sports ministry, could in the end side with the Liga and the Federation, and we end up where for the last couple of months of the season, Olmo and Victor aren't registered.
Why play mea culpa when you can play financial gymnastics, right? Come on, we leave it to Barcelona to always make things exciting for us. I suppose we will see exactly how this can affect their movements in this January transfer window. That's exactly where I want to go right now, because Alex, it's not often that we get excited for big names signing for big clubs in January, but there is potentially a big transfer that could be on the way to shock Real Madrid with Trent Alexander-Arnold from Liverpool, heavily linked with a move to the Santiago Bernabeu. What's the latest there? What's the likelihood of it happening, especially now in January?
Yeah, it's worth saying there is increased pressure on Madrid to act now in the January transfer window after this result in the Supercopa, because of course a natural reaction to that is to look and say the team's not good enough, the team needs strengthening. Now, that was probably the case already, but I guess this is more evidence in that regard. I don't think the Trent situation is done and dusted yet. Of course, we know that Madrid's made an approach right at the start of the January transfer window, which of course sort of dismissed out of hand, but I don't think that's the end of it. I think that there's a pretty established kind of playbook as far as the steps that you take in situations like this when you want a player. Madrid want Trent. They know that he's going to be out of contract in the summer. Ideally, they would like him to come sooner because, yes, there's a weakness there. I talked about right back being a massive issue in this team with Carvajal being out. So they would love him to come sooner. The question is, can you kind of manipulate the situation in a way that makes that happen in terms of putting pressure on Liverpool, offering them some money? Is it ever going to be enough to tempt them? Probably not, but I think they're going to try. I think Madrid will keep trying right until the end of the window if they can, because they know that, look, this is a player that they think they're confident about getting in the summer anyway. If they can get it done now to help the team right now, even better. So I think there's more to come from that. I think it's not over. I think there's more to come right up until the last day of the window. Would it happen? I would still tend to think probably not, because like I say, I don't see any circumstance in which it's advantageous to Liverpool to let him go at this stage of the season, even if there is some money involved. I think it would take so much money that Madrid would never offer that much. So I don't think it happens. But yeah, there's pressure on Madrid to strengthen the squad, because you can't get beaten 5-2 by Barca and not react in some way. And look, Ancelotti has wanted to strengthen the squad for ages. He wanted more signings last summer. He thought there was a weakness in defence last summer, and the club in the end, remember, they were linked with Lenny Yoro, who ended up going to United instead. And then they basically walked away and said, well, okay, if we can't get our top target, we're not going to get our number 2 target. So at that point, Ancelotti wanted a centre-back, and that's still the case. So he has been consistent in pushing for defensive signings in particular. The problem is Madrid don't like the January transfer window. They don't like any sort of emergency kind of rushed short-term signing. Everything is sort of part of a plan, a strategy, long-term targets. It's all sort of slow cooked. You know, there's no kind of fast food when it comes to Real Madrid and transfers. But you know, circumstance things happen and things change, and you know, you get results like this, and that maybe sort of force you to move. So yes, they want to strengthen in January. Whether they do, we still don't know.
Alaba is the signing.
Oh,
like a new signing. Yeah. I mean, he's back in the squad. He's back in the squad. He's back training. He was there in Jeddah for the Supercup. There's been a lot of speculation about with injuries that serious, the state of his knee and the fact that just it hasn't got the cartilage there. We've seen so many times that you just don't know how players are going to come back, if they're going to be the same player. He's taken a lot longer than was expected, because he was in a lot of pain when he recovered from the injury and the surgery and everything else. Just training was painful for him. So he's training now, and the suggestions are that he's playing with less pain than he was before. So yes, it's good to have him back, but we don't know. We don't know what kind of David Alaba we're going to be getting.
Well, with that said, you also don't know what kind of Trent Alexander-Arnold Real Madrid could be getting, because will it be a midfielder Trent Alexander-Arnold or a defending Trent Alexander-Arnold? We talked about their midfield or their defensive frailties, and might have to wonder if he's the one to fill that gap there at right back. Anyways, we're going to take a quick break right now, but when we come back, we'll be finding out more about what it was like in Saudi Arabia for the Supercopa de España.